everyone! Once again, a dark northern hemisphere means that we're racing against the clock to film this video. And first of all, Happy New Year! Happy New Year! Haven't seen you in a while, as per usual, which is not my intention, but who cares about intentions? Here we're talking results. I also got COVID, which was fun. That was great. I really enjoyed it. I was coughing from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, and then I was also not able to breathe super well, because obviously if every time you're trying to breathe you're coughing, it's not the most pleasant experience. So I thought we would do a more informal kind of chatty video, which I realized when I was looking at all of my video ideas for the future that I almost never do. I don't really like the idea of just being an absolute boring mess, which at the end of the day I probably am anyway, but it's not the intention. But I thought that, you know, for a change, and also I feel like I owe, because okay, I don't have an audience. I have a really small audience. But the tiny audience that I have, I am so excited about. I am so grateful and so happy. And recently I surpassed 200 subscribers with my uploading frequency of like one video every 1.5 months. Even if there's a tiny audience that consistently watches my videos, have a more informal chat, because I think if someone actually watches the videos of a creator consistently, they might enjoy. Again, I put the if there because obviously I cannot tell if people subscribe to me because they just like my Gilmore Girls videos and watch nothing else and just wait to see if there's going to be more Gilmore Girls content, and then they forget that I exist, or if it's people who actually watch all of my videos. I mean, all of my videos, my non-Gilmore Girls videos have very little views, so obviously that audience again is tiny. But to be honest, quantity doesn't matter. For me, the fact that some people exist out there is enough, and I want to say thank you. So I thought we could just talk a bit about like reading habits, a bit about the year that went by reading wise, maybe some goals, anticipated reads. I have this issue where most of the books I read I really like. I think that's partially because I pick them very carefully. I mean that I pick the right book at the right time. If a book is not the vibe that I'm looking for in the moment, then I don't read it. So I have higher chances of really getting the most out of the book and really enjoying it. So when I look at all my like 5-star reads of the year, it's many of them. Here I have a list of all of the books that I read during the year, and as you can see, I didn't do that, you know, for booktube this is not many. Yeah, I read 52 out of 65 books. That was my goal, but that's fine, that's why the challenge is there. And of all these books, these were the ones that I rated as 5-star reads. And then books that I really didn't like, there's basically one book that falls into that category. But there are also some other books that I tried to read and then I wasn't in the mood for, and then I DNF'd them, as people say, but I didn't put them in my reading list because I don't count DNFs unless with that particular book. That book I read like 3/4 of it, probably more, I would say 4/5, and I gave that up. So that one I count as read because I think I suffered enough. Anyway, so those were my reads. I don't really do anticipated reads in the sense that I don't excitedly or eagerly wait to run to read new releases, because I'm not in the publishing world, just be really following what exactly is being published right now. I try and keep track of everything, but from a much more relaxed position, because it's not my job, and therefore, although I am excited about new books, I don't rush to buy them, because there are so many books in the world that are forgotten, that are old, that I want to get to, and the new ones just have to wait. But it so happens that this year I do have an anticipated release, just because it's a book that see, that's a mistake. I made the mistake of listening to the New York Times book podcast, the book review, at some point a bit more consistently, and I got into the books that they were describing, and there was this one episode with the author of this book called Between Two Kingdoms. Between Two Kingdoms. The author is Suleka Jawad, and the book was originally published, I think, in February of 2021. I haven't been able to find it in one bookshop that I've looked. I've looked everywhere since then, since February. And I am now eagerly awaiting its paperback release in March, I think. And when that happens, I will go and buy it. However, I've now learned my lesson. I won't be looking forward to books before they're out. Don't get me wrong, it's really important to support authors, especially, for instance, 2020 was a year when authors didn't get their due because of the pandemic. They didn't get to promote the books with their book tours the way that they would originally, and then people of course turned to reading. We did see that there was an increase in sales, but I don't think people necessarily went for 2020 releases that were less known. My point is that 2020 authors needed our support, and I made an effort to read some books just because they were published in 2020. So let's move on. Oh, also, I mean, I've mentioned this before, so some people might remember that I am a Life's Library member, subscriber, and Life's Library will be over this spring. Very sad. There were various issues in terms of profit and the running of the book club by John Green with Rosianna Halse-Rojas. They're running it, so it was its time to end. It has been running for a few years. Sadly, I only subscribed for this last year. I have to say that a lot of the books that I rated as 5 stars and favorites this year and love were Life's Library picks. And a lot of the books that Life's Library sent my way, I haven't gotten to all of them yet. By the way, that's embarrassing to admit, but anyway, I wouldn't have read on my own. I wouldn't have picked up on my own. Biggest example of this is Why Fish Don't Exist, which I've talked about in my last video where I recommend blue books. Which, by the way, was a video I was so excited to make, and it has very, very few views, which again, not a shocker considering my engagement, my views in general, my subscribers, but why not more views? I don't know, I really like the concept. Okay, maybe I didn't execute the concept as well as I would want to for a viewer to be really excited to keep watching, because maybe someone clicks on it because they're like, oh, this looks like a cool video, and then they see my face and they're like, no, help. There's not much I can do about that. I always try my best. Let's go to the big book panel again. These I read because they were sent to me by Life's Library as a subscriber. I mean, they were picked either by John or Rosianna or a guest book chooser. But all of them I really liked. There hasn't been one Life's Library pick so far that I haven't really liked. So that says something. Okay, books that I didn't expect to like during the year include, again, Why Fish Don't Exist. This book I read called The Extreme Self, which is very, very depressing, but somehow really affected me emotionally, even though it's more of a mixed media book. It's text and pictures and art. It's really kind of a conceptual book. These kinds of books don't really affect me. A lot of effort has been put into them, but usually I feel their effect being really superficial on me. This particular book I really, really liked. That was a surprise. There is the whole Goodreads versus Storygraph debate, and the reason why I don't consistently use Storygraph as much as Goodreads and why I haven't done the complete switch is because even though the Goodreads interface is archaic and not that appealing, overall it works better. It makes it easier for me. Maybe it's because we're used to it, I'm used to it. I'm just waiting for Storygraph. I do use it, I have an account, I pick a few really exciting reading challenges, but the interface for some reason doesn't help me do what I want, which is categorize my books, put reading dates, and rate them. And that's the most important thing to do quickly, because otherwise I might not do it and end up not logging the books. And that's what happens with Storygraph usually. I end up not logging the books consistently, and then one day I get really excited about it and I go on Storygraph and start moving the things from Goodreads, the data to Storygraph, and I'm like, oh yay, I did something not useful at all, but I wanted to do it, so that's check. But anyway, so that's my issue with Storygraph. I feel bad because I do not want to support Jeff Bezos' company. I don't want to support Amazon, and Storygraph, it's a women's company. I like to make as much as possible ethically conscious consumer choices, and I do, but at some point we have to also think of the practical element, and we cannot be perfect. Also the illusion that if you somehow filter your consumer choices, you're solving the issue of capitalism. it's not true. So it's good to try to the extent that we all can. Oh, according to Storygraph, the pace of the books that I read is usually either slow or medium. And I mean, I really don't agree with the way people categorize fast-paced, slow and medium-paced books, because if fast-paced is only books that are where every second sentence is about a huge change happening, then yes, I only read slow books. But for me, it's a very different way of labeling them, so. And then most of the books I read are also under 300 pages. This is something I was thinking about recently. Why don't I read longer books? Because I think we have this idea, especially with technology, everything being really just quick and snappy, and we're scared of long form things. And actually reading long books is so pleasurable because you bond with the characters, you really feel like you're in the story, and then you're really sad to close the book in the end. And I think that long books have a higher chance, this is just intuitively I'm saying this, I don't really know if it's true, but I feel like with longer books you have a higher chance of just falling in love with the story in the book and really liking it, because it is a commitment and you will end up bonding with the content of the book, emotionally just really feeling it, because just by virtue of the time you will spend and the opportunities you will give to the characters and the story to appeal to you. So I don't know why I don't do that more often. That's actually something that I want to do this year. I mean, with nonfiction books it's different. This year I read a few nonfiction books that were chunky. One of them was The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, which I haven't talked about in a video because it's too overwhelming for me. I don't know where to start. But it's basically, in my opinion, kind of a 21st century Bible. Everyone should read it, and they should sit there and cry and use it as their guiding point in life. But anyway, and then I read the Marx biography. That was a very rewarding read, but the difference between nonfiction and fiction is that you don't, you know, emotionally necessarily have that intense attachment, obviously, but it's much more challenging, but also very rewarding. I don't know. There was this Instagram story going around where you put the favorite book of each month and then you end up with your overall favorite by kind of having the books compete against each other. The book of January competes with the book of February, and the book of February competes with the book of January and March, and then you somehow kind of have this tree-like chart, structure, whatever it's called, and then you end up with the book of the year. And for me it was The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. Anyway, and I realized that I was very harsh with fiction because I always ended up choosing nonfiction as the best book of the month, and that made me think about why I value nonfiction so much more than fiction in my life. It's probably because I really value the acquisition of factual knowledge. I feel kind of this euphoric, I'm putting the world into boxes and I'm kind of putting everything into place, which is an illusion, but you know. Whereas with fiction, it keeps me going, it makes me so happy, it makes me excited, it makes me sad. I learn from it emotionally. I think our empathy really benefits from reading fiction. But then once the book is over, you forget about it. You forget about the impact it had, or the impact isn't long lasting. I don't know, that's a bit sad. Here it says that I read 3 books that were over 500 pages. Oh, one of them was The Book Thief, right. That was one of those books that I always thought, okay, everyone has read, everyone has loved. But it was actually a great book. It was really, really lived up to its hype for me. Oh God. Okay, here you can see, yeah, fiction loses to nonfiction by a tiny amount. I mean, again, this is up to 40 books, so we're missing 12 books there. 54% nonfiction, 46% fiction. And then genres, this is weird. It says here that it's classics and memoir. And if there's one thing I've realized over the last year is that my very, very obviously preferred genre seems to be memoir, unintentional. But I don't know what they categorize as classic. Okay, let's see. Classics that I read in 2021. I reread The Great Gatsby for the challenge that I did here on YouTube. Okay, this freaking challenge, this thing put me, oh my God, I loved it so much, this video. I put so much effort into it. I was so excited, and I hope that the Swifties would find me and watch the video. And I'm not like upset about how well it did, because for my videos standards, it did really well. But I was hoping more Swifties would be excited about it, like to get more comments from people who are really obsessed with Taylor Swift's music, and I didn't get that, and I'm sad because I really put effort into that video. Anyway, I think that's a YouTube cliche. Okay, then I read The Old Man and the Sea by Hemingway recently, very good, recommended in the Blue Books video. I read a Greek classic, didn't really like it. I read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, The Sorrows of Young Vata, White Sargasso Sea, Their Eyes Are Watching God, Recollections of the Lakes and the Lake Poets, Rebecca yeah, like 10 of the 12 books that I read that are considered classics. How many are they? 10 books. Yeah, 8 of the 10 books I read for the Taylor Swift Reading Challenge. So basically we can disregard this kind of thing and accept that my most read genre is memoir. And again, it's memoir, but it doesn't include all of the memoirs I read, because memoirs that I read in 2021, Giving Up the Ghost by Hilary Mantel, I read in the summer and it was good. Blue Nights by Joan Didion, I talked about in the Blue Books video. Why Be Happy When You Could Be Normal was very good by Jeanette Winterson, I read that in spring. It by Alexa Chung counts as a memoir? Okay. Actually, that's a good jumping start off point, because I want to talk about book snobbery, and it is definitely a book that wouldn't exist if Alexa Chung wasn't at the time. I mean, she still is, but when she published the book specifically, she's a style icon. She was obviously a pop culture phenomenon. The book is just there to give the people what they want, a bit of Alexa Chung, and it's not the kind of book that I would read. But I was going through a really depressed phase, and I went to some random bookshelves and I really needed to read something, but I had no motivation to get out of bed. And the only thing that kind of got me out of bed was the fact that I could go somewhere where there were bookshelves that were not mine, so I could have the element of surprise, just the element of discovery, the adventurous kind of, oh, I might find some books, what will they be? And I went there, and it just caught my eye because I remembered Carly mentioning it as like a really shitty book because of the format, just tiny amounts of text and pictures, and the subject matter being just style and being in your 20s, and it appealed to me in the moment, and I read it that evening and it woke me up and it got me going again, just being a human being, functioning again. Obviously, I'm talking about a short-term effect. I'm not saying it solved my winter melancholy, but that's when I realized, like, you know, stop shaming books. Stop shaming books. And this book, I was a bit embarrassed to add it to my shelves and then rate it as well. I think I rated it 3 stars. But it was obviously a subjective rating. It's about the effect that it had on me in that particular day, in the particular hour, with my particular circumstances. I'm not a reviewer. My job is not to rate books objectively. And anyway, that's my tiny thing that I wanted to say about It by Alexa Chung. I agree with Carly. Girl in a Band I read recently. I didn't put it in the Blue Books recommendations because it didn't make the cut. It wasn't, you know, the best of the year, but it was good. It's very cool if you're really into music, and specifically the punk or new wave scene, because she just name drops a lot of people. A lot of the situations take place with that backdrop. It's really, yeah. Reading Lolita in Tehran was a book that really I found eye-opening. There's a lot of criticism, a lot of debate about this book by Iranian writers and readers, but I think it makes sense that it's a book that has been really, really widely read by an Iranian woman partially criticizing Iran. So I really liked it, but obviously my knowledge of the country's political and social circumstances is really limited to the absolute basics, and I haven't lived there or been there. So How to Write an Autobiographical Novel Essays was the book that was sent to me by Life Sabri that I loved. I loved that book. It was amazing. It was really good, and a book that I would have never picked up on my own because I don't think I would have ever seen it in the first place. Anyway. And then Recollections of the Lakes and the Lake Poets counts as memoir. That's interesting. That's probably the oldest memoir I've ever read. The most, I mean, the memoir that I've read that was published earliest in time. Feminism is a genre for some reason, and it says I read 2 books, All About Love and Their Eyes Were Watching God. All About Love is one of those books that I really loved and I would recommend to everyone. And Bell Hooks sadly died this year at the end of the year, and I'm thinking of doing a video about Bell Hooks and a video about Joan Didion as well, because they're 2 authors that I've read. I mean, Bell Hooks, I've only read 1 book. It's a bit of a stretch to make a video about her, but I really admire her life work and everything, and her as a personality, and I thought maybe I could do a bit of research and do a video on her. I don't know. Philosophy, again, we didn't do too well, but considering I study philosophy, my extracurricular reading usually steers away from that. And also the things that are categorized as philosophy here are weird. Yeah, I don't know, the genre thing needs work here in Storygraph. I only read print books, that's the thing about me. I love print books, I love them. I love them, but I really am grateful that audiobooks exist because a lot of people need them. And some people who would otherwise not read books, because you can obviously listen to an audiobook while you're walking, you can listen to it while you do household chores, it makes it possible to read when you otherwise wouldn't. Because physical reading, or an e-reader, but anyway, the act of reading the sentences visually requires you to dedicate some time for that purpose, and for me that's the beauty of it. But if someone is going to be a person who doesn't read at all, it's much better obviously if they have access to audiobooks. Although I think a lot of people would love the habit of reading if they tried it. Put the effort to systematically read until it becomes more familiar, because honestly, even clearly I have a bit of an interest in books. I buy a lot of books, I go to bookstores a lot, I read a lot of book reviews, I follow a lot of book people on the internet, and I still do not manage to read many days, even though I want to, just because of technology. It's true, literally. I would read so much more if I didn't have a phone. And I don't even want to be on the phone. It just sucks me in. That's why you need to read The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. I hate it. And I think poor people who don't have reading as a habit ingrained, or who do not have this obsession with reading, because how much harder must it be for a person who doesn't have like this obsession with books, and he has an obsession with, I don't know, flowers or tables, and he, she, they, what are they gonna do? And I think a lot more people would read if they had some kind of way to not have their attention stolen from them. But audiobooks exist, so that's amazing. Anyway, but e-readers are also very practical, and they save you a lot of money. And then here we have my star ratings. You can see that I rated, and this is the Storygraph rating, which allows you to put quarter stars. So 15 books I rated as 5-star books, and that's 15 books out of the 40, so the number would increase. And then, oh, I didn't rate Anecdotal Evidence by Wendy Cope, which is the only poetry book I read in... No, it's not. I read Emily Dickinson's poems for the video, but I didn't finish it. But it's the one of 2 poetry collections that I read in 2021, and that was a record-breaking number for me because I don't read poetry. And I'm so proud of myself, and I am excited to read more poetry in 2022. I rated Weirdsville, USA, The Obsessive Universe of David Lynch very low. Forgot about that. That wasn't a good book. But it was successful at kind of helping me get David Lynch a bit more, even though it wasn't a good book. And then I gave Writers and Lovers It, How to Be Parisian, and Rebecca 3 stars. Okay. Yeah, Writers and Lovers by Lily King was one of the very few mediocre books I read in the year, where I was like, okay, you know, I didn't hate reading it, but apart from the bit towards the end that kind of picked up quality-wise, pace-wise, also it was more of like a romance book. I don't know, it wasn't for me. Okay, so I think I've talked a lot. I don't think I really addressed any topic specifically very consistently. My camera is informing me that it is dying of battery soon. So I thought I would end this video here. I've talked about a couple of things. I talked a bit about my reading habits, not that much, but I touched on kind of different topics and the way that my brain works, where I kind of jump from one topic to the next, a bit like I did that for my grandma, definitely. But 2021 for me was, reading wise, a good year. I was really excited to read great books. I honestly hope that for the rest of my life, however long that is, I enjoy reading books as much as I did this year, because they make my life so much better. And I love sharing it. Anyone watching until here, thank you so much. I hope that this was a video that was enjoyable. And if not, let me know. But I hope that you liked it. Bye bye.